Hello, and welcome back to DeMystiFi, where this week we're going to be doing these three things. First, we're going to check in on our investments, both at M1 Finance, where we're purchasing VTI, Vanguard's broad-based index fund, and also over on the decentralized side, check in with our PiDAO BCP investments and make sure both of these things are doing what we expect them to do, making sure our scheduled purchases are going through and that the oven is working on the PiDAO side. Second, we'll track the relative performance of these two over time. So we'll graph them and see which of these two investments is winning in our long run experiment. And then third is where we go a little bit deeper in how this works, primarily focusing on the decentralized side. And this week we'll talk about BCP and how it's composed. Here we are over on M1 Finance. You see that yes, indeed, the transfers have taken place. We'll see this value over time, this line graph increasing as we both deposit new $100 increments every Friday and also as this just grows in value. So right now this is our first week check-in, but we have $200. We'll explain that a little bit, meaning that if we go over here to activity, we'll see that back on Wednesday we made the initial deposit that set it up, and that's where we established a weekly buys of $100 or weekly deposits of $100. So that occurred on Friday. So we're actually kind of two increments in, and we'll just make sure we're at the same pace on the decentralized side with PiDAO. We can take a look at our holdings. So right now we've got just over 1 share of VTI, and looking at the pie from the M1 side, it's entirely in VTI. So looks good. Each Friday this will deposit another $100, and we'll track that over time. And this has no fees, so far we're up just over 1%, and we're only about a week into this. Here on the PiDAO side, I'm just about to make our purchase for the week, and I noticed that if you go into our BCP oven here, we'll see that on the withdrawal I would be expecting to be able to withdraw some BCP from the deposit of ETH we made last week, but that hasn't occurred yet, and I see that our 0.08 ETH is still in the oven, which is unexpected because over the week I kind of monitored this and saw that the threshold had gone over 10 ETH and the oven baked, but this hasn't occurred. So I followed up with the PiDAO team in their Discord chat, and nowhere documented is the fact that for you to enter into an oven, into a pie that's being baked, your threshold must be over 0.1 ETH. And with us at 0.08, we're not hitting that threshold, so therefore we're not going to be baked. So what this means is if we continue with this $100 a week at the current prices, or even if prices go down, we're not going to be making that 0.1 ETH threshold. So it may make sense for us to, instead of doing $100 every week and then just paying gas to put ETH into the oven, we might do $200 every other week, so that when we do a deposit, it's going to put us over the threshold, and then we'll be purchased. So for this week, I'll do a little math, and at the current price of ETH, which is $13.24, $100 would roughly be 0.075 ETH, which when we add it to our 0.08, that'll put us above the 0.1. So if we add this, our transaction has started. Now that transaction has gone through. We see that the 0.075 successfully deposited in the oven. This shows that we now have 0.155 in the oven, meaning that we're above the 0.1 threshold. So the next time that this BCP oven goes above 10, we're at 6.92. Once that goes over 10, then this time, cross our fingers, our deposit will go in, and we'll actually have converted our ETH into the BCP. So things are working as they should. Our understanding of how it should work was a little bit incorrect, thinking that the 0.08 would have gone through. So next time we should see that, and we'll withdraw the BCP, and we can track the value there. So second, let's take a look at our performance over time. So I've established this Google Sheets doc where down the left we'll make an entry for every week that we do a purchase, which will be every week. We'll have the the price, the quantity, and the total is just the price times the quantity. And we do that both for the VTI price, the quantity, this is quantity held total, and then the total for that, and then for the VTI side, and then the BCP will do the same. So I'll track the price of BCP, and unfortunately, in our pockets we still have 0 BCP that's in the oven baking. So this will be coming in more spiky, and I think we'll take that approach of doing $200 every other week rather than $100 a week, just because the prices are such that will not be above the threshold for a bake, and that just saves us a little bit in gas fees. So this line graph right now is not exceptionally interesting, other than we've got an increase on the VTI. It's so far, if we're comparing the two, the VTI is much more straightforward. The traditional finance sector is way more established and mature, so the process for scheduling purchases and having it go through as expected makes for a much more understandable experience, where this is definitely new on the BCP side, and it's going to be a little more interesting, but for that I guess you call it risk, we're hopefully getting a higher return over time. So I think that's all we have on the tracking so far. I'd say the traditional is winning, but we're still very early on. And for this week's going a little bit deeper, we'll talk about the composition of BCP. While it is true that on this page it describes the allocation breakdown of BCP, it's not quite as straightforward as this list would lead you to believe. So let's talk about that for a moment. It is true that it is composed of these assets, but in this particular way. So yes, it is true that BCP directly holds WBTC in an amount of roughly 1/3, exactly 1/3. It holds wrapped ETH at an amount of 1/3, and then what it holds here is in this, it actually holds this as DeFi++, and then we'll talk about each of these a little bit. For WBTC, that stands for wrapped BTC, and how this works is Bitcoin is a completely different different blockchain entirely. So how are we getting Bitcoin as an asset inside of an Ethereum ecosystem? Well, this is the page over at on Wrapped Bitcoin, which describes how it works, and it basically is an IOU. A wrapped BTC token is an IOU token to say, hey, I owe you 1 Bitcoin over on the Bitcoin blockchain. So how it works is a person sends the Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain over to some custodian. That custodian then creates the WBTC on the Ethereum blockchain, and then you receive the WBTC tokens. So understanding that there is an amount of trust in this system. So when you hold a wrapped Bitcoin, you're not actually holding a Bitcoin, you're holding an IOU for 1 Bitcoin. The second is wrapped Ether, which is also a wrapped token, but it's much more straightforward. And over here on the on weth.io, this kind of describes it pretty well, where you send in Ether, and what this contract does is it gives that Ether, or gives you back a token with the properties that make it ERC20 compatible. So it has the functions, the APIs to make it look and interact with the ERC20 standard, and within the Ethereum blockchain you can go back and forth, like this animation suggests, to wrap your ETH with that ERC20 properties, and you can also go backwards and unwrap it to trade your WETH token back for ETH directly. So much more straightforward. In this case, you are holding a token with value on the Ethereum chain, rather than like with wrapped Bitcoin, it's an IOU 1 Bitcoin, and you're getting a token on the Ethereum chain. That last section for all of these other tokens other than the wrapped tokens, this is giving you DeFi++. So let's take a look at the DeFi++ description. So here, and you can separately, if you don't want those wrapped tokens, you can purchase DeFi++ directly. So BCP holds 1/3 of its holdings in DeFi++, and similarly, this is a composition of 2 other funds. And you'll see this here, that this allocation is composed of multiple pies. So DeFi++ is a combination of DeFi plus S and DeFi plus L. and we'll take a look at each of those, and this is composed in a 70-30 weighted balance of those two things. That is the high level of BCP. If you have questions, please let me know in comments. We can use that as fodder for future deep dive videos. Not deep dive, but going a little bit deeper videos. And I think that's all for this week. Thank you.